Greeting YouTube. Whenever there is more than one of anything, people are going to start rating them. Best, worst, fastest, slowest. It's simply in our nature. For me, I collect role-playing game books, and I've done so since 1978. And in that time, I've read a whole lot of books that deal with monsters or creatures. They tend to call them monsters in fantasy games and creatures in science fiction games, but they're the same thing. They're monster books. And I've kept pretty much almost every one I've ever purchased. A couple I've encountered that were just bad, or I eventually became superfluous, so I got rid of them. But even for systems I don't own, I've got monster books, because the art is often evocative, and there's very rarely ever a situation where I can't steal something out of it. And out of my collection, there is one which is best, and this is it. It's the Monsternomicon. It's from Privateer Press. It is for the Iron Crown setting, which is also part of the War Machine Tactical Miniatures game. And this particular volume right here is the 3.0 version. There is a 3.5 update, which I desperately want to own, but I don't yet. And there is a second volume, which I've never actually laid my hands on before. I've seen it online, but I've never looked at one up close, and I would very much like to add one of those to my collection as well. And this is simply the best monster book ever. This is the metric by which all other monster books should be measured. Whoever wants to make one in the future, this is what they should be aiming for or attempting to surpass. And there's a reason. First of all, the artwork is incredible. Here's a quick shot. That's a very cool piranha-like fish in this. And that is an awesome anthropomorphic monster. Well, one of the things I love about this is the layout. At the top of each page, there's the name of the monster, and then there's a little guide right here. A little guide right here. Here you go, right there. Gives you a size comparison between this monster and something else that is comparable to a human. So you got this one, for example. You get an example of one that is larger than a human. And every single monster in this book has that entry. Then you have your stat block, and this is a 3.0 stat block. It's not quite as updated as the 3.5, which I actually think 3.5 stat blocks are superior to the 3.0 stat blocks. And then you have the passage that governs the individual monster. And some of these monsters have more than one page, but most of them have more than just a 2-page spread, which I think is really the best way to do it. It gives you enough space to have decent art. In this case, for example, on the Soul Stalker Infernal, you have 2 pictures, which is good because it gives you the reader a chance to be, because you're being presented with something that's never been seen before. So having 2 different pictures of it is very useful. You have the size comparison again. You have the fluff text, the text which is the description of this creature, and it's very good. And a lot of these monsters in this book have little blurbs of fiction which are being told you from the point of view of a professional monster hunter. And he's even at the back of this book, there are stats for this individual, plus a prestige class about being this particular type of monster hunter, which is just golden. You have, of course, a section on combat. Then you have 2 things which are great. You have legends and lore, and what this does is gives you 4 categories of information: common, uncommon, rare, and obscure, which would have different difficulty challenges, DCs, for knowing about this creature. So if you're using your monster lore skill, which is I think what it was called in 3.0, and it was changed in 3.5 to it was broken into knowledge nature and knowledge dungeoneering. What your DC challenge is to know some information about this monster and what you learn. And then the best thing, there's a section on hooks. Now, some of the latter 3.5 books used this. In particular, they even used them for both Forgotten Realms and Eberron, which I thought was very helpful. But having the hooks there is just so evocative. It is so helpful to a GM to have someone else's idea of what this monster can do and how they can fit into the world that you're going to place it in. Now, even if you hate the hook that they present with you, even if you think it's the dumbest idea that you've ever heard, I can guarantee you it's going to get you thinking. Even if just to prove that that's a dumb idea, I can come up with better. It is going to generate thoughts and plot lines and story hooks. You can't help it. You're a GM. It's what you do. You can't walk down the street without thinking of something that relates to your campaign when you're in full GM mode. And these plot hooks at the entry for every single creature in this book are a godsend. I just can't say enough about this. I mean, I own dozens of monster books, from first edition all the way up to the latest things that have been produced for some of the newer rule systems. And this was without a doubt the best of the best. Whenever the topic of monster books come up online, this is the book I always mention. It doesn't matter what genre we are discussing, whether it's Star Wars Saga, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, it doesn't matter. Now, the new Pathfinder Bestiary is coming out this month. So, there is a potential challenger for the best, because the new one, I believe, is going to be full color, and I really have been impressed with what Pathfinder did with their core book. So, we'll see how their bestiary looks at the end of this month, or maybe next month, because it may take me a bit to read it. But at the moment, the top slot in all of gaming books yet seen print is the Monsternomicon. Not to mention, the title is very cool because it plays off the Necronomicon, which is in the seminal, iconic, fictional bits of the science fiction and fantasy genre. I even own a copy of the Necronomicon that was printed, I believe, back in the 70s. I'm not positive. But if you are looking for a monster book to add to your collection, or even if you're just looking for a single book that isn't part of the core system you play, I recommend the Monsternomicon. I would recommend the 3.5 version, which I will hopefully get someday. And I look forward to purchasing the second volume as well. So, I mean, get out there. If you don't own a copy, find one.